Someone once looked at the Titanic, the most famous shipwreck on the planet, and thought about filling it with ping-pong balls. And here is the wild part, because that is not even the craziest idea on this list. For over 100 years, smart people, rich people, and entire engineering companies have tried to drag the Titanic back up to the surface, but every single attempt failed. So today we are doing something fun by walking through every plan anyone seriously proposed and rating each one on the insanity scale from 1 to 10. Stick around, because the dumbest sounding plan on the list is actually the one that came closest to working. The idea was to pump millions of air-filled ping-pong balls into the wreck so all that trapped air would float the ship up like a giant balloon. On paper it kind of works since air floats, meaning that if you stuff enough air in something heavy, it rises. A kid could understand it, and that is part of the charm, but the Titanic is sitting under about 2.5 miles of water. Down there, the pressure is bonkers, with roughly 6,000 pounds pressing on every square inch. A ping-pong ball at that depth does not float anything because it gets squished into a little plastic pancake the second it arrives. So you would be sending down millions of balls just to instantly crush all of them, making this an adorable but completely useless plan with an insanity score of 6 out of 10. The next plan was to forget air and pump the whole hull full of petroleum jelly, which shoves the water out, and since it is lighter than water, up she goes. It dodges the ping-pong problem because jelly does not get crushed the way a hollow ball does, so the buoyancy idea survives a little longer. However, you would need an absurd amount of it pumped perfectly into a ship that is already falling apart in freezing black water 2.5 miles down by remote control. The logistics are not just hard, they are pure science fiction, making this an insanity score of 7 out of 10 because it is slightly less silly than the balls but somehow more disgusting. Plan 3 was to encase the entire Titanic in a colossal block of ice so the ice floats and the ship floats up with it. Honestly, I respect the audacity, but engineers actually ran the numbers on this one. To freeze that much water around the wreck, you would need somewhere around 500,000 tons of liquid nitrogen pumped down to the seabed. 500,000 tons is a number so big it stops sounding like a real plan and starts sounding like a supervillain origin story, earning it an insanity score of 9 out of 10 because we have officially left reality. Plan 4 was to patch up the holes, pump the ship full of compressed air, and let it shoot to the surface like a submarine blowing its tanks. This one came from a famous 1976 novel and it made for an amazing dramatic scene with the ship erupting out of the ocean. People loved it, but there are two problems. First, the book was written back when everyone assumed the Titanic sank in one neat piece, which it did not, and second, the air pressure you would need to pump in at that depth would blow the hull apart before it ever moved, giving it an insanity score of 5 out of 10 for being a great movie but terrible engineering. Okay, time out, because even if one of those plans was less ridiculous, they were all fighting the same three monsters. The first monster is the depth of 2.5 miles straight down, meaning you could stack the Empire State Building on top of itself 8 times and you still would not reach the wreck. The second monster is the weight, because the Titanic weighs over 52,000 tons, which is like picturing roughly 36,000 cars welded together, and there is no crane, no cable, and nothing on Earth rated to hoist that from that depth. The third monster, which is the big one, is that the ship is not even in one piece. When it sank, it ripped in half, and the front and back now sit about 2,000 feet apart on the seafloor. The front looks okay in photos, but 100 years of rust has turned the steel fragile, so if you hook a cable to it and pull, it would not lift and would instead crumble into dust in your hands. So that is the wall every plan smashed into, but one team got part of it and their story is genuinely nuts. In 1994, a salvage company spotted a huge slab of the ship's hull lying in the wreckage, about the size of a bus with 4 portholes still in it. They nicknamed it the Big Piece and decided they were bringing it home. During their first attempt in 1996, they strapped flotation bags to it and started floating it up. They were so confident that they brought cruise ships full of spectators to watch, and when the piece reached the surface, the crowd went wild. But then a hurricane showed up, the rope snapped, and 15 tons of Titanic dropped straight back to the bottom in a brutal turn of events. During their second attempt in 1998 they came back and did it right, and this time it stuck, meaning the chunk of hull is now sitting in a Las Vegas exhibit where over 22 million people have walked past it. Now here is the gut punch of scale, because that piece weighed 15 tons while the whole ship weighs over 52,000 tons, meaning it took 4 years and 2 expeditions to recover less than 1,000th of it. Furthermore, every artifact people have pulled up, including the 5,500 plus plates, coins, and even a violin, none of it came from inside the ship because it was all scattered in the debris field around it, making the hull itself basically untouchable. While everyone argued about lifting it, something else quietly started eating it. Those rust icicles dripping off the wreck are actually colonies of bacteria that literally feed on iron, and in 2010, scientists found a brand new species living in there that had never been seen anywhere else on Earth, because its whole job is munching the Titanic's steel. The ship is losing hundreds of pounds of iron every single day, so decks that were standing in the 1980s have already collapsed, with estimates suggesting the Titanic might be totally gone within a few decades. So the real answer to why no one has raised it is not just that we cannot, but that we are running out of time even if we wanted to. However, there is one more reason, and it is the one that actually matters. More than 1,500 people died when the Titanic went down on April 15, 1912, and most of them are still there. When Robert Ballard first found the wreck in 1985, he did not celebrate, because he and his crew stood on the deck of their ship and held a moment of silence over the largest grave in the ocean. The bodies are long gone, but the detail I cannot shake is that leather does not rot the way bodies do, so down there, scattered across the seafloor exactly where people fell, are pairs of shoes. In some spots, a grown-up's shoes sit right next to a child's shoe, which is why governments stopped treating this like treasure. The UN protected the site in 2012, and the US and UK now control who is even allowed near it, because the wreck is no longer a prize and is instead a cemetery that we treat with respect. So while we might someday be able to raise the Titanic with technology we do not have yet, I personally land on the belief that we should not. Down there are the last traces of people who sold everything they owned for a one-way ticket to a new life, including people like Manuel Urichurtu, a passenger who mailed his mother a postcard the day he boarded, promising he would come see her soon, though he never made it home. The ocean is slowly taking the Titanic back day by day and rust fleck by rust fleck, and after everything those people went through to chase a better life, letting them rest might be the one plan on this whole list that actually makes sense. That is my take, so drop yours in the comments to let me know if we should raise it or leave it, because I read every single one.